Before I dive in, kindly hit that subscribe button on your screen. You have 30 seconds to pack whatever you can carry before security escorts you out. The rest stays here. It was never yours anyway. My brother's voice cut through the stunned silence of the executive boardroom. My sister Vanessa stood beside him, arms crossed, a cold smile playing on her lips as they watched me frozen in shock. My father's funeral program still clutched in my trembling hands. Life has a way of revealing who people truly are when power changes hands. One moment you're family, the next you're nothing but an inconvenience to be discarded. I'd always been different from my ambitious, cutthroat siblings. While they fought for my father's attention with business proposals and social connections, I had quietly cared for him during his illness, reading to him for hours when the pain medications made it impossible for him to focus his eyes on the page. Now, less than 24 hours after lowering James Hamilton, Sr., into the ground, my siblings had called an emergency family meeting that turned out to be nothing more than an ambush. The will reading is next week, my brother continued, checking his watch impatiently. But Dad's lawyer already confirmed what we all knew. The company passes to those who actually worked here. You're not even mentioned, B. Did you really think bringing him tea and holding his hand entitled you to a piece of Hamilton Industries? 27 seconds later, security guards appeared in the doorway. I looked into my brother's eyes, searching for any trace of the boy who had once protected me from playground bullies. There was nothing there but cold ambition. 15 seconds, Vanessa said, examining her manicured nails. I stood, smoothed the wrinkles from my black funeral dress, and walked with quiet dignity toward the door. I took nothing but my purse and the small silver locket my father had pressed into my palm the night before he died. You won't even give me time to pack my clothes? I asked, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. You can buy new ones with whatever you've been skimming from Dad all these years, my brother sneered. We're not idiots, B. Why else would you spend so much time with him if not to manipulate your way into his will? The accusation stung worse than the eviction. How could they believe I had ulterior motives for sitting with our dying father when they couldn't be bothered to visit him more than once a week? As the security guards flanked me, my brother called after me. Oh, and don't bother trying to contact any of Dad's friends or business associates. We've already explained how you took advantage of his illness. No one will help you now. The massive oak doors closed behind me with finality. 26 years in the Hamilton mansion, and it ended like this, escorted out like a criminal. I didn't cry until I reached my car, the only possession my siblings couldn't legally take from me. Rain began to fall as I sat in the parking lot, unsure where to go or what to do next. My phone buzzed with text messages from friends cancelling plans. Colleagues suddenly too busy to speak with me. Whatever story my siblings had spread was working with terrifying efficiency. I had $743 in my personal bank account, a full tank of gas, and nowhere to go. What I didn't know, what none of us Hamiltons knew, was that across town, in a small law office that had represented James Hamilton, Sr., for over 40 years, a package sat waiting. On it, written in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were instructions that it be delivered to me 3 days after his funeral, along with a handwritten note, when they show you who they really are, show them who you really are. 3 days that would change everything. 3 weeks before my father drew his final breath, I had sat beside his hospital bed, gently dabbing perspiration from his forehead as he drifted in and out of consciousness. The doctors had given him 6 months. He lasted barely 3. You were always the strongest of them, he had whispered during a moment of clarity, his once commanding voice now frail. They mistake your kindness for weakness. That's their first mistake. I had smiled softly, used to my father's cryptic statements in recent weeks. The cancer medication often made him philosophical, sometimes paranoid. I attributed his warnings about my siblings to the drugs. I'm not strong like them, Dad, I had replied, adjusting his blanket. He runs half your divisions. Vanessa handles all your international contracts. I just read you books and make sure the nurses don't skimp on your pain medication. My father's eyes had suddenly cleared, intense despite the illness ravaging him. You think success is measured in spreadsheets and contracts. Fools count their worth in dollars. The wise count in lives touched. Now, 3 days after being thrown out of my home, I sat in my car outside a small motel on the outskirts of the city. I had spent nearly half my savings on 3 nights lodging, using the rest to buy essential toiletries and a change of clothes from a discount store. My remaining possessions consisted of my phone, my father's locket, and increasingly frantic text messages from the few friends who hadn't abandoned me. "Is it true?" texted Rachel, my roommate from college. "Everyone's saying you manipulated your dad for money. The press is running with it." My stomach turned as I opened a news app. There it was, Hamilton heiress disinherited. Sources say she manipulated dying billionaire. The photo they'd used showed me looking distant at the funeral. In reality, I had been fighting back tears. The article quoted sources close to the family, claiming I'd neglected my duties to the company while isolating my father from his other children during his final months. My brother was quoted directly, "Our father finally saw through her manipulation. It broke his heart to cut her off, but he protected the company's future." It was all lies. I had never wanted the company. I'd spent time with my father because my siblings were too busy to visit regularly. I'd read to him because the silence of his hospital room seemed to depress him. There had never been discussions of inheritance or position. I closed the app, hands shaking. With my reputation destroyed and my family connection severed, even finding work would be difficult. Hamilton Industries touched every major business in the city. Who would hire the disgraced daughter? A sharp knock on my car window made me jump. A short, older man in an impeccably tailored grey suit stood beside my car, a leather briefcase clutched in one hand. Cautiously, I lowered the window an inch. "Miss Hamilton." "Beatrice Hamilton," the man asked, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. "Who's asking?" Suspicion had become my default in recent days. "My name is Theodore Winters. I was your father's personal attorney for 43 years. He passed a business card through the window crack. "I've been trying to reach you. Your phone has been redirecting to your brother's office." I frowned. "That's impossible. I have my phone right here." "Not your cell phone, Miss Hamilton. Your father had a private line installed in your quarters at the mansion. Calls are now being intercepted. The first rail betrayal had happened before I'd even been thrown out. My siblings had been monitoring my communications with my father." "What do you want, Mr. Winters?" I asked, too exhausted for social niceties. "Your father left something in my possession. He was quite specific about when and how it should be delivered to you." He gestured to my motel room. "Perhaps we could speak privately. What I have to share shouldn't be discussed in a parking lot." 20 minutes later, I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at a sealed package wrapped in heavy brown paper. Theodore Winters had placed it on the small table between us along with a letter bearing my father's distinctive handwriting. "Your father amended his will 17 times in the last year of his life," Winters explained, his voice measured. "Each amendment more unusual than the last. Your siblings were aware of only the first 3 changes. They said I wasn't even mentioned in the will," I said quietly. A small smile crossed the attorney's face. "In the version they've seen, that is correct. Your father anticipated difficulties. He instructed me to allow that version to be the official document until precisely 1 week after his funeral." "Why? What's in this package?" "I don't know the full contents. Your father sealed it himself and made me swear not to open it. He said only that it contained the truth that would rewrite Hamilton history." Winters checked his watch. "I must leave you now. The fewer people who know of my visit, the better. Your siblings have considerable resources at their disposal." He stood, straightening his jacket. "One last thing, Miss Hamilton. Your father told me to tell you, the locket is the key. Does that mean anything to you?" My hand moved unconsciously to the silver locket around my neck. "I'm not sure. After Winters departed, I sat alone with the package, fear and curiosity battling within me. Finally, I carefully unwrapped it to reveal a sleek metal case with a small digital lock. No key or combination was visible, only a small rectangular depression in the center. The locket is the key. With trembling fingers, I removed the silver locket from around my neck. What I had assumed was a simple piece of jewelry now revealed itself to be something far more significant. The locket fit perfectly into the depression on the case. There was a soft click and the lid opened to reveal a USB drive, a handwritten letter, and a smaller envelope marked "Open Last." The letter began, "My dearest Beatrice, if you're reading this, then they've shown their true colors, just as I feared they would." I stared at the motel television, the only device I had available to view the contents of the USB drive. My father's face filled the screen, gaunt from illness, but with eyes burning with the intensity one remembered from his healthy days. He was seated in his private study, the room none of his children were permitted to enter without invitation. "Beatrice," he began, his voice stronger than I had heard it in months. "If you're watching this, then everything has happened as I predicted. Your siblings have taken control of Hamilton Industries, and they've cast you out." I gasped. How could he have known? "Don't look so surprised," my father continued as if anticipating my reaction. "I raised wolves alongside a sheep. I've always known what would happen when I was no longer there to keep them in check." He shifted in his chair, wincing slightly from pain. "What you're about to learn will change everything. Your understanding of our family, of Hamilton Industries, even of yourself. But first, you need to know why I let this happen. Why I appeared to leave you nothing while giving everything to your siblings." My father leaned closer to the camera. "I needed to see what they would do when they thought they had won. People reveal their true nature in victory more honestly than in defeat. And now you've seen it too, haven't you?" I nodded at the screen, tears welling in my eyes. Hamilton Industries was built on a foundation of my sweat and determination. Yes. But it was built because of you, Beatrice. My father's expression softened. 26 years ago, I was nothing. A failed businessman with mounting debts and a pregnant wife who died bringing twins into the world. I frowned. Twins? Their mother had died giving birth to my brother. Vanessa and I had different birth mothers. At least that's what we had always been told. "The night your mother died," James continued, "I stood on the Westlake Bridge with your brother in one arm. I was going to jump, end it all. The debts, the grief, the responsibility of a child I wasn't prepared to raise alone. It was too much." I covered my mouth in shock. This wasn't the origin story of Hamilton Industries I had grown up hearing. And then I heard crying. Not your brother, another baby. Someone had abandoned a newborn girl in a cardboard box near the bridge. You. The world seemed to stop. I couldn't breathe. I climbed down from the ledge and picked up that box. Inside was the tiniest baby girl I'd ever seen, wrapped in nothing but newspaper. And something happened to me in that moment. Beatrice, finding you saved my life. I couldn't jump with two babies depending on me. James wiped a tear from his eye. I took you both to the hospital. Said my wife had delivered twins before dying. No one questioned it. The Hamilton twins, your brother and Beatrice. I had a purpose again. I paused the video, my mind reeling. I wasn't a Hamilton by blood. I was a foundling my father had discovered in his darkest moment. It explained so much, why I looked nothing like my siblings. Why I'd never felt I truly belonged. With shaking hands, I pressed play again. 3 days after I found you, a man approached me in the hospital. He'd seen me on the bridge that night, watched me find you, but was too far away to intervene. He offered me a job out of pity. That job became my first step toward building Hamilton Industries. My father's expression hardened. Everything I built because of you. You saved my life, and I owed you a future. But your siblings, they never knew the truth. I let them believe they were entitled to the Hamilton legacy by blood. a legacy that only exists because of a baby girl in a cardboard box. He coughed, reaching for water. There's more you need to know about the company, about your siblings' betrayals, about your true identity. It's all documented in the files on this drive. The video cut to another recording, this one in what appeared to be a bank vault. My father stood beside a wall of safe deposit boxes. Hamilton Industries is built on 3 core patents I developed in the company's early years. Patents that revolutionized medical technology and made us billions. What your brother and Vanessa don't know is that I signed those patents over to you 5 years ago. On paper, Hamilton Industries has been licensing its core technology from a shell company owned entirely by you since you turned 21. I felt dizzy. The implications were staggering. They need your signature every 3 years to renew those licenses. The next renewal is due 30 days from now. Without it, Hamilton Industries loses the right to use its own foundational technology. My father smiled grimly. I've given them enough rope to hang themselves, Beatrice. How they've treated you gives you every right to destroy them. But what you choose to do with this power, that will reveal who you truly are. The video ended and I sat in stunned silence. Outside, rain lashed against the motel windows as thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm outside mirrored the turbulence within me. I was not who I thought I was. My family was not my family by blood. And the company I had always felt disconnected from was, in some legal sense, already partly mine. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered cautiously. Miss Hamilton, this is Detective Warren with City Police. We need to speak with you immediately regarding some serious allegations that have been made. Your siblings have filed charges against you for theft of company property and intellectual property violation. They were moving faster than my father had anticipated. They weren't just pushing me out. They were trying to destroy me before I could fight back. Before I continue, kindly subscribe if you haven't. Miss Hamilton, these are serious accusations, Detective Warren said, his weathered face revealing nothing as he sat across from me in the police station's interview room. Your brother has provided documentation showing you accessed confidential company servers the night before your father's funeral. That's impossible, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I was at the hospital until midnight, then at home preparing for the funeral. I haven't accessed company servers in months. The detective slid a printout across the table. It showed access logs with my employee credentials highlighted, timestamp 2:17 a.m. the night before the funeral. Someone used my login, but it wasn't me, I insisted. I don't even have the password anymore. It changed monthly and I hadn't used the system since I took leave to care for my father. Warren studied me with practiced neutrality. Your sister provided sworn testimony that you boasted about having an insurance against being cut out of the company, that you had copied proprietary files. I felt a chill. They were systematically destroying every avenue of defense before I could even begin to fight back. Detective, my siblings threw me out of my home the day after our father's funeral. They've frozen my accounts, turned my friends against me with false stories, and now they're fabricating criminal charges. Does that sound like the behavior of innocent people? Something in my quiet dignity seemed to reach the detective. He leaned back, tapping his pen against the table. I can't dismiss the evidence they presented, he said finally. But I'm not filing charges today. We'll continue investigating. Don't leave town, Miss Hamilton. Outside the police station, rain continued to fall as I huddled under a small awning, unsure where to go. My motel room would only be paid through tomorrow, and my car was running dangerously low on fuel. A sleek black car pulled to the curb in front of me, the window rolling down to reveal an elegant woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Get in, Beatrice, she said simply. We have mutual interests to discuss. I hesitated. I don't know you. Diana Winters, Theodore's wife and your father's former business partner. Your siblings are moving faster than we anticipated. This isn't a safe place to talk. 15 minutes later, we sat in a private room at the back of a small cafe owned by Diana's family. Theodore Winters joined us, looking more concerned than when I had last seen him. Your brother has filed an injunction preventing me from filing the amended will, he explained, spreading papers across the table. He's claiming I conspired with you to alter your father's final wishes. They're trying to cut off every path before I can even find my footing, I murmured. Diana nodded grimly. James always said your brother had a shark's instincts for weakness. He's moving to discredit anyone who might help you while isolating you completely. But why? I asked. They've already won. They have the company, the mansion, everything. Theodore and Diana exchanged glances. Have you reviewed all the files on the drive? Theodore asked carefully. Not yet. Just the first video. Then you don't know about Vanessa's embezzlement scheme, Diana said bluntly. Or that your brother has been selling company secrets to competitors. Your father documented it all during his final months. I felt my world tilting again. What? James suspected for years but couldn't prove it until recently, Theodore continued. He hired private investigators last year when certain projects failed unexpectedly. The evidence they gathered is devastating, especially against Vanessa. She's been systematically draining company accounts through a network of shell companies. My father knew this and still left them the company. I couldn't hide my shock. Diana smiled thinly. Your father was playing a longer game. The company they've inherited is a house of cards days away from collapse. The quarterly audit happens next week. Without access to the embezzled funds, Vanessa can't cover the shortfalls. Without your patent renewal, your brother can't complete the merger he's been secretly negotiating. They're not just afraid of losing their inheritance, Theodore added. They're afraid of prison. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Check your email. Proof your siblings are framing you. A friend at Hamilton IT. I opened my email to find screenshots of internal company messages between my brother and the head of IT security, explicitly ordering him to create false server logs using my credentials. This could clear me with the police, I breathed. It's a start, Diana agreed. But you need to move quickly. The patent renewal deadline is 3 weeks away, and they'll do anything to force your signature or discredit you to the point where they can challenge the patent transfer itself. I need somewhere safe to stay while I review the rest of the files, I said, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was. That's arranged, Theodore replied. Your father purchased a small apartment under a holding company name last year. No connection to Hamilton Industries or the family name. You'll be safe there while we prepare. As we left the cafe, I noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street, its engine running. Diana noticed my gaze. Your brother's security team, she said quietly. They've been following you since you left the mansion. Don't worry. My driver knows how to lose a tail. Later that evening, in the sparsely furnished safe house apartment, I continued reviewing the files my father had left me, financial records, surveillance photos, recorded conversations. James Hamilton, Sr., had compiled a devastating case against his other children. Most shocking was the video of Vanessa meeting with the CEO of our largest competitor, offering proprietary Hamilton technology in exchange for a position after what she called the inevitable collapse of my father's outdated leadership. The final video on the drive was labeled simply, "The Truth About Your Mother." My finger hovered over the play button. I had already learned I was abandoned as a newborn. What more could there be to discover about my origins? Before I could press play, my phone rang. A call from Rachel, my former college roommate. B. Oh my God, are you okay? Rachel sounded genuinely concerned. I've been trying to reach you for days. I'm managing, I replied cautiously, unsure how much to reveal. Listen, I need to see you. I found something you need to know. It's about your brother. I overheard him talking to someone about her, making sure she's silenced permanently. B, I think you're in danger. I felt cold dread spreading through me. Where are you? How did you hear this? I'm at the Hamilton Foundation Charity Gala. I was hired to help with event planning. Remember? Your brother doesn't know I know you. He was in the service corridor on his phone. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour by the East Boat House. Come alone. I don't know who else is involved. The call ended, leaving me with a terrible choice: trust my oldest friend or remain safely hidden. What Rachel couldn't know, was that the Hamilton Foundation Gala had been cancelled 3 days ago following James Hamilton's death. My siblings were setting a trap, and they were using the one person I might still trust as bait. I sat in my borrowed car a block away from Riverside Park, rain streaking down the windshield as I contemplated my next move. The trap my siblings had set using Rachel's name was obvious now that I'd had time to think it through. The Hamilton Foundation Gala had been cancelled days ago. My father's death had seen to that. Someone was using Rachel's phone, banking on my desperation for an ally. I dialed Detective Warren's number, surprising myself with my own decision. "Hamilton, it's nearly midnight," he answered gruffly. "Someone's using my friend's phone to lure me to Riverside Park. They mentioned the Hamilton Foundation Gala, which was cancelled. My friend wouldn't make that mistake." There was a pause on the line. "Stay where you are. I'm sending a patrol car." "Thank you," I said, relief washing over me. "Don't thank me yet. Your brother was in my office an hour ago, pushing hard for your arrest. Something about this whole situation doesn't add up." 20 minutes later, I watched from my hiding place as police officers approached 2 men waiting near the boat house. Even from a distance, I recognized one as Jackson Mills, my brother's head of security. The officers detained them, finding Rachel's phone in Mills' pocket. Detective Warren approached my car afterward. "They're claiming they were meeting you to return personal property from the mansion, but they were both armed and we found a syringe with an unknown substance." I felt nauseous. They were going to drug me. "Looks that way. We're testing the contents." Warren studied me with new interest. "Your siblings seem awfully determined to silence you for someone who supposedly has nothing." "I have evidence they're framing me," I said, deciding to trust my instincts, and proof of their embezzlement and corporate espionage. Warren's expression remained professional, but something shifted in his eyes. "Bring it to the station tomorrow. Now go somewhere safe, somewhere they wouldn't think to look." Instead of returning to the safe house apartment, I checked into a small airport hotel using cash, switching off my phone to prevent tracking. In the anonymous room, I finally pressed play on the last video file, "The Truth About Your Mother." My father's face appeared, looking more frail than in previous recordings. "Beatrice, what I'm about to tell you is the secret I've protected longest. The truth about where you came from." He took a labored breath. "I told you how I found you abandoned near Westlake Bridge. What I didn't tell you was that earlier that evening, I had met with a young woman, barely more than a girl, who was desperately trying to sell me her biomedical research. Research that would eventually become Hamilton Industries' core technology." I felt my heartbeat quicken. Her name was Elizabeth Chun, a brilliant graduate student whose professor had stolen her work. No one would believe her, a 20-year-old woman accusing a decorated scientist. She had evidence but no resources to fight him. James Hamilton looked directly into the camera. I didn't help her. I was drowning in my own problems, grieving my wife, facing bankruptcy. I dismissed her. He paused, visibly struggling with the memory. 2 hours later, I found you on that bridge. It wasn't until years later, when Hamilton Industries was thriving thanks to those patents I'd acquired from Elizabeth's professor, that I connected the dots. The blanket you were wrapped in had a university logo. The newspaper had Elizabeth's obituary marked in pen. I couldn't breathe. You weren't abandoned by some nameless mother, Beatrice. You were Elizabeth Chun's daughter. She left you where she knew I would find you, with evidence of her work that I had dismissed. Then she jumped from that same bridge. Tears streamed down James Hamilton's face. Hamilton Industries was built on your mother's stolen research. Every dollar we've earned came from her brilliant mind. When I realized the truth, I spent millions tracking down her family, but found nothing. Then I began the process of making things right, putting her patents in your name, where they always belonged. I paused the video, overwhelmed. My mother had been a brilliant scientist. Her innovations had built Hamilton Industries, and my father, James Hamilton, had spent decades carrying the weight of that knowledge. I pressed play again with trembling fingers. "There's one more thing you should know," James continued. "Your mother's professor wasn't working alone. He had a financial backer, someone who funded his lab in exchange for first rights to any breakthroughs." He looked away from the camera. That backer was Richard Reynolds, Vanessa's biological father. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Vanessa's father had been complicit in stealing my mother's research. The connection between our families went deeper than I had imagined. The Reynolds family has been trying to gain control of those patents for decades, James explained. Richard died still believing they belonged to the professor, but Vanessa has been digging. She's found documentation suggesting her father was the rightful owner. What she doesn't know is that neither of them ever had a legitimate claim. The video ended with my father's final message. "Your mother's name belongs on those patents, Beatrice. Your name. Whatever you decide to do with Hamilton Industries, make sure the world knows the truth about Elizabeth Chun." I sat in stunned silence as the screen went dark. Everything I thought I knew about myself and my family had been a carefully constructed fiction. My mother had been erased from history, her innovations attributed to others. The next morning, I arrived at the police station, clutching a folder of evidence against my siblings. Detective Warren ushered me into an interview room where another officer waited. "This is Detective Santos from White Collar Crimes," Warren explained. "She specializes in corporate fraud." I placed my folder on the table. "Before I share this, I need your assurance that my evidence won't mysteriously disappear. My siblings have considerable influence in this city." Santos nodded. "We've dealt with powerful families before, Miss Hamilton. Your brother has been calling the commissioner directly, demanding your arrest." "Then you should see this first," I said, pulling out the screenshots of my brother ordering IT to frame me. They fabricated evidence against me. The detectives examined the documents, their expressions growing more serious as I methodically presented evidence of Vanessa's embezzlement scheme and my brother's corporate espionage. "This is substantial," Santos said finally. "Enough for warrants, at minimum." "There's more," I continued, explaining the patent situation and my mother's stolen research. As we talked, I noticed Warren receiving a text message. His expression darkened. "Miss Hamilton, we may have a problem." He turned his phone to show me a breaking news headline. "Hamilton heiress sought for questioning in father's death. Sources claim autopsy shows poisoning." My blood ran cold. That's impossible. My father died of cancer. "Your siblings just raised the stakes," Santos said grimly. "They're claiming new tissue samples show elevated levels of arsenic consistent with long-term poisoning. And since I was his primary caretaker, they're framing me for murder," I whispered, the room spinning around me. "They'll destroy everything to keep control." Warren's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to me with regret in his eyes. "That was the DA. They're issuing an arrest warrant based on preliminary toxicology results. I can't stop this, but I can give you a head start." "Go now." "But I'm innocent," I protested. "The evidence we've collected will help clear you," Santos assured me. "But once you're in custody, your siblings will make sure you stay there through the patent deadline. We need time to build our case properly." "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. Warren handed me a business card. "My sister runs a women's shelter across the state line. They don't ask questions. Stay there until we contact you." As I left the station through a back entrance, my phone buzzed with a news alert. The story about my father's alleged poisoning was everywhere, my face plastered across screens with the caption, "Daughter suspected in billionaire's death." My siblings hadn't just taken my home and reputation. Now they were taking my freedom, and possibly my life. The women's shelter sat at the end of a quiet street in a small town 4 hours from the city. Paint peeled from its wooden exterior, but the windows glowed with warm light as I approached, carrying only a small bag of hastily purchased essentials. "You must be Warren's friend," said the shelter director, a sturdy woman with kind eyes, who introduced herself simply as May. "We've prepared a room for you, no questions asked, as promised." The room was little more than a converted office with a cot, but after 3 days of driving between cheap motels, paying cash and using false names, it felt like sanctuary. "Thank you," I whispered, overcome with gratitude. "Rest," May advised. "Tomorrow's soon enough to figure out your next steps." But rest wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw news headlines declaring me a murderer. Imagined my father's legacy destroyed by his own children's greed. The weight of everything I'd learned crushed down upon me, my mother's stolen legacy, my siblings' betrayal, the company built on deception. My phone, a cheap prepaid model I'd purchased after discarding my traceable smartphone, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hamilton Industries stock falling after murder allegations. Your brother attempting emergency board meeting to maintain control. Vanessa liquidating assets. They're panicking. TWW. Theodore was still watching, still fighting. It gave me a small measure of hope. That hope shattered the next morning when May knocked gently on my door, face grave as she handed me a newspaper. The headline struck like a physical blow: Hamilton attorney found dead in apparent suicide. Theodore Winter's body had been discovered in his office, a typed suicide note claiming responsibility for falsifying documents on my behalf. The article quoted my brother expressing shock and disappointment at the depths of deception orchestrated by his sister and the family's trusted lawyer. I sank to the floor, the paper clutched in trembling hands. Theodore had been my father's friend for over 40 years. He would never have taken his own life, and certainly not while leaving a note that betrayed everything he believed in. "They killed him," I whispered, horror washing over me. "They killed him to silence him." May sat beside me, saying nothing but offering her presence as I processed this new devastation. Later that day, another text arrived: Diana in protective custody. Evidence compromised at Winter's office. File attached contains backup copies. Be careful. Warren. The attached file contained scans of the documents proving my siblings' crimes. But without Theodore to authenticate them, their value was diminished. Worse, without the original videos from my father, I had no proof of my claim to the patents or my mother's story. 2 days later, I watched a press conference where my brother and Vanessa presented a united front, expressing deep concern for their mentally unstable sister who had fled justice. They announced a reward for information leading to my location. "Our father's legacy deserves justice," my brother declared, his performance of grief almost convincing. "Hamilton Industries will continue its mission of innovation while we pray for our sister to turn herself in and get the help she needs." The camera panned to show a large portrait of James Hamilton, Sr., displayed behind them, his stern face overseeing their performance. Beside it stood a younger woman I didn't recognize, watching with apparent sympathy. "Who is that?" I murmured, moving closer to the small television. The news anchor provided the answer. The Hamiltons were joined by Dr. Elise Reynolds, daughter of Richard Reynolds and half-sister to Vanessa Hamilton, who has temporarily joined the Hamilton Industries board during this family crisis. Elise Reynolds, another connection to the man who had helped steal my mother's research. The web of deception stretched further than I had imagined. That night, as I tried to sleep on the narrow cot, my prepaid phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Miss Hamilton, this is Elise Reynolds." The voice matched the composed woman from the press conference. "Don't hang up. I know the truth about your mother." I sat up, fully alert. "How did you get this number?" "Diana Winters gave it to me before she disappeared." "Listen carefully. We don't have much time. My father left records about Elizabeth Chun. I found them after he died." "Why are you telling me this?" "You're working with my siblings." "I'm working against them," Elise corrected. "Like you, I've recently discovered uncomfortable truths about my family. My father stole your mother's work. I want to make that right. Why should I trust you?" Because I can prove Theodore Winters didn't commit suicide. I have security footage from the building showing your brother's head of security entering Theodore's office 2 hours before his body was discovered. My heart pounded. If that's true, why not take it to the police? The same police department where your brother has been calling the commissioner directly. Elise countered. We need more leverage first. Meet me tomorrow at the Riverside Diner just outside town. Come alone, and we'll discuss how to take back what's yours. The line went dead, leaving me with an impossible choice: trust this stranger connected to my family's enemies, or continue hiding as my siblings dismantled every piece of evidence that could clear my name. The next morning, I stood across the street from the Riverside Diner, watching carefully for any sign of a trap. The small restaurant appeared quiet, with only a few patrons visible through its windows. Among them sat a woman matching Elise Reynolds' description, alone in a corner booth, no security or companions in sight. Still, I hesitated. My siblings had already demonstrated the lengths they would go to silence me. Trusting anyone connected to them could be a fatal mistake. As I debated, a news alert flashed on my phone: Hamilton Industries announces emergency patent resolution. Company secures rights to core technology. Somehow they had found a way around my signature requirement. My last piece of leverage was slipping away. With nothing left to lose, I crossed the street and entered the diner. They're using a legal loophole, Elise explained, sliding documents across the table. Since the original patents were filed under the professor's name, they're claiming the subsequent transfer to you was invalid without his estate's approval. It won't hold up long term, but it buys them time to complete the merger with Global Pharmaceuticals. I studied the woman across from me. Elise Reynolds had her father's sharp features, but none of his ruthless demeanor, at least not visibly. In another life, we might have been friends. Now, we were reluctant allies, united by family secrets. Why are you really helping me? I asked directly. Your family benefits from Hamilton Industries' success. Elise's expression hardened. 2 months ago, I found my father's private records while clearing his estate. They detailed how he and Professor Winters conspired to steal Elizabeth Chun's research. How they drove a brilliant young scientist to suicide and covered it up. She pushed a worn leather journal across the table. This is my father's record of their arrangement. He documented everything, including the fact that Elizabeth was pregnant when she approached your father that night. My hands trembled as I opened the journal. Inside, in meticulous handwriting, Richard Reynolds had documented his investment in stealing Elizabeth Chun's innovations. His callous notes about the troublesome student made my blood boil. My father was many things, Elise continued. But I never knew he was capable of this. When I confronted Vanessa with what I'd found, she didn't deny it. She said it was business and that I should be grateful for the lifestyle his business decisions provided us. That sounds like Vanessa, I murmured. I joined their board with a single purpose: to access documents that would prove your mother's contribution and restore her name to the patents she created. I studied Elise carefully. You could have done that without contacting me. Why the personal interest? Elise hesitated, then reached into her bag and removed an old photograph. Because Elizabeth Chun wasn't just some random student to my father before he met your sister's mother. He and Elizabeth had been involved. He abandoned her when she became pregnant, then stole her research when she tried to succeed on her own. The photograph showed a young Richard Reynolds with his arm around a beautiful Asian woman with intelligent eyes and a determined expression: Elizabeth Chun, my mother. My father destroyed your mother's life and stole her legacy, Elise said quietly. That makes us connected in ways neither of us expected. I can't undo what he did, but I can help restore what belongs to you. I felt dizzy with the implications. What exactly are you proposing? A 3-part plan, Elise replied, all business now. First, we release the evidence of Theodore's murder to the press and police simultaneously, forcing an investigation your siblings can't control. Second, we file emergency injunctions challenging their patent workaround using your father's videos and my father's journal as evidence. And third? I asked. Elise smiled grimly. We attend the Hamilton Industries shareholder meeting tomorrow where they plan to announce the merger. With Diana's help, we've secured proxy votes from enough minority shareholders to block any major decisions, but only if you're physically present to present your case. I shook my head. I can't go back. There's a warrant for my arrest. That's been handled, Elise said, sliding an envelope across the table. Detective Santos has been building a case against your siblings. She has enough evidence to suspend the warrant temporarily, but you'll need to surrender yourself after the meeting. You're asking me to trust the same legal system my siblings have been manipulating for weeks. I'm asking you to trust yourself, Elise countered. Your father believed you were stronger than your siblings. Prove him right. I stared at the envelope, understanding the impossible choice before me. Return to face my accusers with no guarantee of success, or remain in hiding as my mother's legacy was erased forever. If I do this, I said slowly, I want one promise from you. Name it. Whatever happens to me, Elizabeth Chun's name will be restored to her patents. The world will know what she created. Elise nodded solemnly. I've already prepared the press release. It goes out regardless of tomorrow's outcome. As we finalized details, my phone buzzed with a news alert that made my blood run cold. Hamilton Estate reveals surprise heir. James Hamilton Sr.'s biological daughter comes forward. The accompanying photo showed Vanessa standing beside a young woman who looked remarkably like our father, both smiling for the cameras. Who is that? I demanded, showing Elise the screen. Elise's expression darkened. Amanda Torres. Vanessa found her 3 days ago. Supposedly James Hamilton's daughter from a relationship before he married. They fast-tracked DNA testing that confirms the relation. That's impossible, I protested. My father would have told me about another daughter. Fabricated test results aren't hard to arrange when you have billions at stake, Elise pointed out. They're creating a backup heir in case their case against you falls apart. The revelation should have crushed my spirit. Instead, something hardened within me. For weeks, I had been reacting to my siblings' moves, always one step behind. It was time to change the game. We need to adjust our plan, I said with newfound determination. Tomorrow isn't just about stopping the merger or clearing my name. It's about exposing everything, my mother's stolen research, my siblings' crimes, and this latest fraud. Elise studied me with new respect. That's significantly more ambitious than what I proposed. My father said people reveal their true nature in victory more honestly than in defeat, I replied, my voice steady. My siblings believe they've won. Now it's time they learn what defeat feels like. Before I continue, hit that subscribe button. The next morning, as sunlight broke through clouds that had lingered for days, I stood outside the towering Hamilton Industries headquarters. The building I had avoided for most of my adult life now represented my last chance at justice. Beside me, Elise checked her watch. The shareholders are assembling now. Your brother and Vanessa will make their entrance in 15 minutes. They always time it for maximum impact. And the press? Already inside, expecting the merger announcement. Elise handed me a small USB drive. This contains everything, your father's videos, my father's journal, the security footage of Theodore's murder, and documentation of the falsified DNA test. The moment you insert this into the presentation system, it overrides their prepared slides. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. For the first time since my father's death, I felt his strength flowing through me. Not James Hamilton's corporate ruthlessness, but the quiet determination that had built something meaningful from nothing. And beyond that, I felt something else, a connection to Elizabeth Chun, the brilliant woman whose innovations had changed the world without recognition. My mother. Whatever happens in there, I said quietly, my mother's name will be remembered. As we approached the entrance, Detective Santos met us as planned, badge visible. You understand the arrangement? She asked me. I can delay the warrant execution only until the meeting concludes. After that, you'll need to come with me voluntarily. I nodded. I understand. Then let's go change some lives, the detective said, holding the door open. Together, we walked into the building where everything had begun, and where everything was about to change. The Hamilton Industries executive boardroom buzzed with anticipation. Board members, major shareholders, and carefully selected press representatives filled the space, their murmured conversations creating a steady hum of expectation. At the front of the room, a podium stood before the massive Hamilton Industries logo, flanked by portraits of company founders. I stood in the back, flanked by Elise and Detective Santos. No one had noticed me yet. All eyes were on my brother and Vanessa, who sat at the head table reviewing documents with their executive team, and the young woman being introduced as Amanda Torres, their newly discovered half-sister. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats," announced the board secretary. "Mr. Hamilton will begin the special shareholder meeting momentarily." As the crowd settled, Elise leaned close to me. "Remember, once you insert the drive, you'll have about 30 seconds before the system switches over. Make them count." I nodded, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshakable. I watched as my brother approached the podium, his expensive suit and practiced smile projecting the confidence of a man who believed victory was already his. "Distinguished shareholders and honored guests," he began, his voice carrying the practiced charm that had won over countless business partners. "Today marks a historic moment for Hamilton Industries. In the wake of my father's tragic passing, we've navigated challenging waters with a steady hand." He paused, allowing his expression to shift to practiced solemnity. "Although we continue to seek answers regarding the circumstances of my father's death and our sister's unfortunate involvement, we remain committed to the future he envisioned." The audacity of his performance fueled my determination. I moved forward, Elise and Detective Santos following closely. "It is therefore my great pleasure to announce that Hamilton Industries has secured a landmark merger with Global Pharmaceuticals, ensuring our continued market dominance for decades to come." Applause rippled through the room. I used the cover of the noise to move toward the audiovisual desk at the side of the stage. The technician recognized me immediately, eyes widening in shock. "Miss Hamilton, there's a warrant." Detective Santos quietly displayed her badge. "She's with me." Official investigation. Confusion crossed the technician's face, but he stepped aside, unwilling to challenge law enforcement. My brother continued, unaware of the development at the side of the stage. "This merger represents the culmination of my father's vision, securing the future of the patents that have always been the foundation of Hamilton Industries' success." I inserted the USB drive into the computer. The system blinked, recognizing the new input. "And now, I'd like to introduce someone special," my brother continued. "Recently, we made an extraordinary discovery. Our father had another daughter, unknown to us until after his passing. Amanda Torres has been confirmed through DNA testing as James Hamilton Sr.'s biological daughter, and we're proud to welcome her to the Hamilton family and to our executive team." The young woman stood, smiling nervously as cameras flashed. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, another pawn in my sibling's game. The screen behind my brother flickered, his prepared slides disappearing as the system switched to my files. A thumbnail grid of videos and documents appeared, bearing labels like James Hamilton Final Testimony and Elizabeth Chun Patent Documentation. My brother hadn't noticed yet, still introducing Amanda. "Amanda brings fresh perspective to our leadership team, Anne." "Excuse me, Mr. Hamilton," interrupted a shareholder in the front row, pointing at the screen. "What's happening with the presentation?" My brother turned, his confident smile freezing as he saw the change display. His eyes scanned the room frantically until they locked onto me, now walking steadily toward the stage. "Security!" Vanessa shouted, half rising from her seat. "Stay where you are," Detective Santos called out, her badge raised. "This is now part of an active investigation." The room erupted in confused murmurs as I reached the podium. My brother stepped back, his face contorted in a mixture of rage and fear. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed. Telling the truth, I replied simply, my voice carrying through the microphone. The room fell silent. "Distinguished shareholders and honored guests," I began, echoing my brother's opening, but with none of his artificial polish. "My name is Beatrice Hamilton. Most of you know me as the disinherited daughter recently accused of terrible crimes. I paused, surveying the room. Reporters leaned forward, sensing a story beyond what they'd been promised. I'm here today not to defend myself, but to honor two people, James Hamilton, Sr., my adoptive father, and Elizabeth Chun, my biological mother, whose revolutionary patents form the foundation of everything this company has built. I clicked a remote, starting the first video. James Hamilton's gaunt face filled the screen. If you're watching this recording, my father began, then events have unfolded as I predicted. My son and daughter have seized control of Hamilton Industries and cast out Beatrice, the only one who showed me true loyalty and love during my final days. Gasps rippled through the audience. Vanessa's face had gone pale. What follows is my true final testimony, James continued on screen. A record of crimes committed against this company by my own children, and the truth about how Hamilton Industries was founded, not on my innovations, but on those of a brilliant young scientist named Elizabeth Chun. For the next 12 minutes, the room remained in stunned silence as James Hamilton detailed Vanessa's embezzlement scheme, complete with bank records and transaction logs. He explained my brother's corporate espionage, showing surveillance footage of meetings with competitors. He revealed the truth about Elizabeth Chun's stolen research, presenting original documents bearing her name that predated the official patents. Throughout the presentation, I stood quietly, my dignity in stark contrast to my siblings' growing panic. My brother attempted to approach the podium twice, only to be blocked by Detective Santos. Vanessa was frantically texting someone, her fingers trembling. When the video ended, I spoke again. Everything my father stated has been independently verified. The documents you see were recovered from multiple sources, including Richard Reynolds's personal records. I nodded toward Elise, who stepped forward. My name is Elise Reynolds. My father conspired with Professor Winters to steal Elizabeth Chun's research that became Hamilton Industries' core patents. I have his journal detailing this theft, which I've submitted to the SEC and patent authorities. A board member stood, his face ashen. These are serious allegations. If true, they impact the legal foundation of our entire company. They're obviously fabrications, my brother interjected desperately. My sister has been mentally unstable since our father's death. These videos could easily be manipulated. The videos have been authenticated by 3 independent experts, Detective Santos responded, as has the security footage showing your head of security, Jackson Mills, entering Theodore Winters' office shortly before his suicide. The screen changed to show clear security footage of Mills entering the attorney's office, then leaving 30 minutes later, looking agitated. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Shareholders began whispering urgently to each other. A reporter slipped from the room, already calling her editor. There's more, I continued calmly. The DNA test supposedly confirming Miss Torres as James Hamilton's daughter was falsified. I have the lab technician's sworn statement that he was paid to manipulate the results. Amanda Torres stood abruptly, shock and betrayal written across her face as she turned to Vanessa. You told me the test was legitimate. It is, Vanessa insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. I don't understand, Amanda said, looking increasingly distressed. You said you found evidence I was his daughter. You are not James Hamilton's daughter, I said gently. You're another victim of my siblings' desperation. A shareholder stood, addressing the board chairman. I move to suspend all merger proceedings immediately and convene an emergency session to address these allegations. Another rose. I second the motion and further move to temporarily remove Mr. Hamilton and Vanessa Hamilton from their positions pending investigation. The chairman looked shell-shocked but nodded. All in favor? Hands rose throughout the room. My brother lunged toward me, his composure finally shattering completely. You think you've won, he snarled. You're still wanted for murder. I made sure of that. The toxicology tests were falsified, Detective Santos finished for him. We have the original lab report showing your father died of natural causes related to his cancer. No arsenic, no poisoning. She produced handcuffs. Mr. Hamilton, you're under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, corporate fraud, and the murder of Theodore Winters. As security guards moved to restrain Vanessa, who had attempted to flee toward the exit, I addressed the stunned shareholders once more. I didn't come here today seeking control of Hamilton Industries. I came to restore the truth that this company was built on Elizabeth Chun's genius and that James Hamilton, Sr. spent his final years trying to right that wrong. I clicked to the final slide, a photograph of Elizabeth Chun in her university lab, young and brilliant, her future still before her. This is my mother. Her name belongs on the patents that built this company. Her story deserves to be told. And her daughter, my voice broke slightly, then strengthened again, her daughter deserves justice. The room fell silent, then erupted in questions from reporters and shareholders alike. But my attention was drawn to Amanda Torres, who stood alone and confused as her supposed new family disintegrated before her eyes. I crossed to her, extending a hand. I'm sorry you were dragged into this. None of this is your fault. Amanda took my hand hesitantly. I just wanted to belong somewhere. They found me working as a barista and said they had evidence I was James Hamilton's daughter. It seemed like a miracle. They're very good at manipulating people, I said softly. But it's over now. As my siblings were led away, I felt no triumph, only a profound sense of completion. My father's final lesson had been delivered. My mother's legacy would be restored. And for the first time since James Hamilton's death, I felt free of the weight I'd carried all my life, the weight of never quite belonging. Detective Santos approached. We still need to go to the station to formally clear your name. But after that, you're free. Thank you, I said sincerely. As we prepared to leave, Elise joined us. The board is requesting you stay for an emergency session. They want to discuss the patent situation and leadership transitions. I looked around the boardroom where everything had begun with my siblings' cruel dismissal. Now they were gone, and I remained. Not because I had fought harder or been more ruthless, but because I had stayed true to what mattered, truth and justice, not power. Tell them I'll return after I've cleared my name, I replied. Some things are more important than business. 6 months later, I stood at the podium of a different kind of gathering. The newly inaugurated Elizabeth Chun Innovation Center occupied the ground floor of what had once been Hamilton Industries headquarters. The building now bore a new name, Chun Hamilton Technologies. Behind me, a portrait of Elizabeth Chun hung prominently, her brilliant smile and determined eyes captured perfectly. Beside it, a smaller portrait of James Hamilton, Sr., acknowledged his role in building the company while recognizing the truth of its foundation. Today we celebrate not just a new beginning, I addressed the gathered crowd of employees, scientists, and press, but a long overdue recognition of the woman whose brilliant mind revolutionized medical technology and saved countless lives. The audience applauded as I unveiled a plaque listing Elizabeth Chun as the primary inventor on all core patents. It had taken 3 months of legal battles to restore my mother's name officially, but the Patent Office had ultimately recognized the overwhelming evidence. Chun Hamilton Technologies begins a new chapter today, I continued, one built on transparency, ethical innovation, and proper credit for all contributors to our shared success. In the front row, Elise Reynolds nodded in approval. Our unlikely alliance had evolved into a genuine friendship and business partnership. As the new co-chairs of the restructured company, we had spent months rebuilding what my siblings had nearly destroyed. Many of you have asked about my siblings, I acknowledged, addressing the question that inevitably arose. My brother awaits trial for his role in Theodore Winters' death, while Vanessa has accepted a plea agreement requiring full restitution of embezzled funds. I wish them both the opportunity for reflection and growth. It was the diplomatic answer I always gave. The private reality was more complicated. My brother had refused all contact, maintaining his innocence despite overwhelming evidence. Vanessa, facing financial ruin, had attempted to negotiate a more favorable settlement by offering information about other corporate crimes, only to discover that her knowledge had already been documented in our father's files. Looking forward, I continued, the Elizabeth Chun Fellowship will support 5 promising female scientists annually, providing resources and mentorship my mother never received. This represents our commitment to nurturing innovation wherever it emerges. As I spoke, I caught sight of Diana Winters in the audience. Theodore's widow had become an unexpected ally, using her late husband's extensive records to help rebuild the company's legal foundation. The pain of his loss remained, but his legacy lived on in the reformed corporation. After the ceremony concluded, I mingled with guests in the reception area. The mayor approached, offering congratulations on the center's opening. "The city is fortunate to have Chun Hamilton Technologies remaining here," he said. "Your decision not to relocate after everything that happened speaks volumes about your character." "This is where it all began," I replied simply. "Both the good and the bad." As the crowd thinned, I found myself standing alone before my mother's portrait. Elizabeth Chun's eyes seemed to look directly at me across decades and beyond tragedy, with pride. "She would be so proud of you," said a quiet voice behind me. I turned to find Amanda Torres. After the truth had come out about the falsified DNA test, I had helped Amanda secure a legitimate position in the company's community outreach division. Though not actually related to the Hamilton family, Amanda had found her own place in the restructured organization. "Thank you for coming today," I said warmly. "I wouldn't have missed it," Amanda replied. "You gave me a chance when you had every reason not to trust me. We were both manipulated by the same people. The difference is I had my father's preparation. You were thrown into the middle without warning." We stood in companionable silence, observing the portrait together. "Have you decided what to do about your father's house?" Amanda asked eventually. The Hamilton mansion had remained unoccupied since my siblings' downfall. As the legal heir, I now held title to the sprawling estate that had never truly felt like home. "I'm donating it to the city," I revealed. "It's being converted into a residential science academy for underprivileged students interested in medical research. The first class moves in next fall." "That seems appropriate," Amanda nodded. "Creating something positive from something painful." Later that evening, I sat alone in my new apartment overlooking the river. Unlike the opulence of the Hamilton mansion, I had chosen a space that reflected my own personality, comfortable, warm, filled with books and art collected during my recent travels. On my desk sat the silver locket my father had given me, now open to reveal a tiny photograph of Elizabeth Chun that James had kept hidden for decades. Beside it lay the journal my father had left, his final entries addressed directly to me. I picked it up, turning to the last page I had read countless times. "Beatrice, when you find your own path forward, remember that true legacy isn't measured in buildings bearing our name or accounts filled with wealth. It's measured in truth honored, wrongs righted, and lives touched. You were always the best of us because you were never truly one of us. You were something finer, something truer, your mother's daughter in every way that matters. I found you on that bridge, but in saving you, you saved me. I only wish I had honored her memory sooner. That task now falls to you. I have no doubt you will succeed where I failed." My phone chimed with a message from Elise, Patent Office delivered final certification today. All Elizabeth Chun patents officially recognized and recorded for posterity. We did it. I smiled, feeling a sense of completion. The journey that had begun with my eviction from my childhood home had transformed into something I could never have imagined, a chance to restore my mother's legacy while creating something meaningful from the ruins of deception. My doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening it, I found Detective Warren holding a small evidence bag. "Thought you might want this back," he said, handing it to me. "Case files are closed, and this technically belongs to you now." Inside was the USB drive containing my father's videos, the evidence that had changed everything. "Thank you," I said, genuinely moved, "for everything." Warren nodded. "Justice doesn't always find its way, Miss Hamilton. I'm glad it did this time." After he left, I stepped onto my balcony, watching the city lights shimmer against the darkening sky. 6 months ago, I had slept in my car, cast out and falsely accused. Today, I stood as the chairwoman of a reborn company, my mother's name restored to history, my father's final wishes fulfilled. I thought of my siblings, now facing the consequences of their actions. Despite everything, I felt no hatred toward them, only sadness for the people they had chosen to become. Perhaps someday redemption might be possible, though that path would be theirs to find. The silver locket caught the last light of sunset as I held it up. "We did it, Mom," I whispered to the evening air. "Your name is where it belongs. Your work is recognized. And your daughter found her way. Tomorrow would bring new challenges." The restructured company faced rebuilding investor confidence. The Elizabeth Chun Fellowship needed to establish its credibility in the scientific community. And I myself was still learning to navigate a world where I was no longer defined by my relationship to the Hamilton name. But tonight, standing between my past and future, I, Beatrice Hamilton, daughter of Elizabeth Chun, felt something I had searched for my entire life, the certainty of knowing exactly who I was and where I belonged. 3 months after the opening of the Elizabeth Chun Innovation Center, I received an unexpected letter. The return address showed a federal correctional facility, Vanessa's temporary home. I almost discarded it unopened, but something made me hesitate. Perhaps it was my father's belief that everyone deserves the chance to be heard, even those who have wronged us deeply. Inside was a single page, Vanessa's elegant handwriting now slightly shaky. "Beatrice, I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. What we did to you was unforgivable. I've had time to reflect on who I've become and the choices that led me here. Yesterday, I saw the announcement of the first Elizabeth Chun Fellows on television. 5 brilliant young women who will now have opportunities my father and I tried to deny your mother. There's a symmetry to that justice I can't help but appreciate, even from here. I know words mean little after actions so terrible, but I wanted you to know, I am sorry. Not for getting caught, but for who I allowed myself to become, someone who valued wealth and power over family and truth. Your mother's story deserves to be told. Your father was right about you all along. Vanessa." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. I wasn't ready to respond, perhaps might never be. But the acknowledgement, that simple recognition of truth, felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. A week later, I stood before a lecture hall filled with medical students at the university where Elizabeth Chun had once studied. The dean had invited me to give a talk about my mother's innovations and their impact on modern medicine. Innovation doesn't exist in isolation, I told them, slides displaying Elizabeth's original notes behind me. It requires not just brilliant minds, but systems that nurture and protect those minds. My mother had the former but was failed by the latter. I paused, looking at the diverse faces watching me intently. Elizabeth Chun didn't live to see her work change the world. She didn't experience the recognition she deserved. But her story isn't just about injustice, it's about persistence. The truth of her contribution persisted. It waited decades to be recognized, but eventually, it emerged. After the lecture, a young Asian woman approached me, clutching a notebook. "Miss Hamilton, I'm studying biomedical engineering," she said, her voice soft but determined. "I applied for the Elizabeth Chun Fellowship. Your mother's story, it reminds me of my grandmother's. She was also a scientist whose work was credited to male colleagues." I smiled at her. "What's your name?" "Jenny Liu." "Well, Jenny Liu, keep detailed records of everything you create. And know that times are changing. There are people fighting to make sure what happened to my mother and your grandmother doesn't happen to you." Her eyes brightened. "That's why I want to work at Chun Hamilton someday. You're building something different." "We're trying," I acknowledged. "And we'll need brilliant minds like yours to succeed." As spring turned to summer, the first cohort of students moved into the Hamilton Science Academy, formerly my father's mansion. Walking through halls that had once felt cold and imposing, now filled with young voices and scientific equipment, I felt a sense of rightness that the space had been transformed. The director led me to what had once been my father's study, now converted into a library and reading room. On the wall hung a joint portrait of James Hamilton and Elizabeth Chun, painted from photographs, the parents who had never met but whose lives had intertwined to create both a corporate empire and, eventually, justice. "The students are especially excited about the mentorship program," the director explained. Having working scientists from Chun Hamilton visit weekly has been invaluable. I nodded, thinking of Elise's suggestion that we involve company researchers in the academy. Knowledge should flow freely, not be hoarded behind corporate walls, she had said, surprising me with how different her philosophy was from her father's. As I prepared to leave, a teenage girl approached me hesitantly in the foyer. "Miss Hamilton? I just wanted to say thank you. My mom used to clean offices at Hamilton Industries before the changes. Now she's enrolled in your company's education program, training to be a lab technician." I was touched by this unexpected connection. "What's your name?" "Maria Gonzalez. I'm studying here because of the full scholarship program." "It's nice to meet you, Maria. Your mother sounds like someone with determination." "She is." The girl smiled. "She says we both are. That's why we'll succeed." Driving back to the city, I reflected on these encounters: Vanessa's letter, Jenny's ambition, Maria's gratitude. Each represented a different facet of the legacy I was trying to build, one that honored both James Hamilton's capacity for growth and Elizabeth Chun's brilliant innovation. That evening, I called Elise to discuss our upcoming board meeting. Our partnership had proven surprisingly effective, her business acumen complementing my focus on research and development. The quarterly results exceeded projections, she reported. Turns out ethical business practices are actually good for the bottom line. Who knew? I laughed. Don't sound so surprised. We're proving there's another way to run a successful company, one that doesn't require deception or exploitation. Speaking of which, Elise continued, her tone growing serious, I've been meaning to tell you. I visited your brother last week. I was silent for a moment. Unlike Vanessa, my brother had maintained his innocence, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing even as the evidence mounted against him. How was he? I finally asked. Angry. Bitter. But also, diminished somehow. He asked about you. What did you tell him? The truth, that you're succeeding beyond anyone's expectations. That the company is thriving under new leadership. That Elizabeth Chun's name is becoming synonymous with innovation in medical technology. I closed my eyes, imagining his reaction. Did he say anything else? He asked if you'd ever visit. I said I didn't know. I hadn't decided if I could face him, or if doing so would serve any purpose beyond reopening wounds. Thank you for going, I said finally. He shouldn't be completely alone, even if he brought this on himself. That's more generosity than many would offer, Elise observed. Maybe. Or maybe it's just recognizing that people are more than their worst actions. I thought of my father's journey from desperate man on a bridge to someone trying to right old wrongs. People can change. I have to believe that. 1 year to the day after I'd been thrown out of the Hamilton mansion, I returned to Westlake Bridge. The night was clear and cold, stars visible despite the city lights. I stood at the spot where James Hamilton had once contemplated ending his life, where Elizabeth Chun had left her infant daughter as her final act of hope. I opened the locket that had changed everything, looking at the tiny photo of my mother inside. I wish I could have known you, I whispered. But I feel like I do, through your work, through the difference you've made in the world. The breeze off the water carried my words away. Yet somehow, I felt heard. My phone buzzed with a notification. The Elizabeth Chun story had just been optioned for a documentary series. Another step toward ensuring she would never again be erased from history. As I walked back toward my car, I noticed a woman sitting on a bench, head bowed over what appeared to be research papers despite the late hour. Something in her focused determination reminded me of the photos I'd seen of my mother. Beautiful night for stargazing, I said as I passed. Less ideal for reading. She looked up, startled, then laughed. Deadline tomorrow. The stars will wait, but my professor won't. What are you working on? I asked, genuinely curious. Biomedical engineering. Adaptations of the Chun protocols for pediatric applications. I couldn't help but smile. Those protocols were revolutionary when they were first developed. They still are, she said with enthusiasm. That's why I'm specializing in them. Did you know the woman who created them wasn't recognized for decades? Elizabeth Chun. There's going to be a documentary about her. I'd heard something about that, I replied, warmed by her innocent excitement. I think her story will inspire many young scientists. It already has, she said, gesturing to her papers. Me, for one. As I continued to my car, I felt a profound sense of completion. My mother's legacy was secure not just in legal documents and company names, but in the minds and work of a new generation. The cycle of inspiration and innovation would continue. That night, I added a final entry to the journal my father had left me. James. A year ago, you left me a puzzle that revealed both painful truths and unexpected gifts. You asked me to show the world who I really am when faced with betrayal and injustice. I hope I've made choices that honor both you and my mother. Elizabeth Chun's name now stands alongside yours in the company you built together, though she never knew it. Her innovations are recognized and celebrated. And I, the baby you found on a bridge, have found my own path forward. You once told me that true legacy isn't measured in buildings or wealth, but in lives touched. By that measure, both you and Elizabeth have left extraordinary legacies, not just in the medical advances that have saved countless lives, but in the daughter you never intended to share. I am Elizabeth Chun's daughter by birth, James Hamilton's daughter by choice and love. In honoring both of you, I finally discovered who I truly am. Beatrice Chun Hamilton. And there you have it, the extraordinary journey of Beatrice Hamilton, from homeless and falsely accused to restoring her mother's legacy and creating something truly meaningful from tragedy. What did you think of Beatrice's path to redemption and justice? Would you have shown the same compassion toward your siblings after such betrayal? Subscribe now to get more powerful stories of family secrets, justice, and redemption. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of Beatrice's journey resonated with you the most?